To other news now, voters in Lebanon went to the polls for the country's first parliamentary elections in nearly a decade. A new proportional electoral system is in place, which cuts the number of districts, while Lebanese people living abroad were allowed to vote for the first time. The ballot is widely seen as important for the country's economic stability, but unlikely to shake up the overall balance of power. Well, for more on this, let's bring in France 24's Sanam Chantier, who's in Beirut for us. Sanam, polls there closed. What's happening where you are?
Rochelle, absolutely. Polls are closing as we speak, and the latest figure that I have is from several hours ago of the voter count down, and that actually stands at some 24.4%, which is actually rather low in comparison to the last election that took place in Lebanon in 2009. And a number of observers have been saying to me throughout the day that they feel that the country's leadership, that those that arranged the election somehow let themselves down. Why, do you ask? The reason for that is because they had under a decade, that's 9 years, to arrange for this election, and there have been a number of issues. One of them was regarding voter confusion in a number of districts because, of course, people have to choose from a list in addition to their preferred candidate, and you're seeing an electoral alliance between some non-traditional members that are emerging and then some more traditional political players. In addition to that, women were underrepresented, even though we had very much high numbers of participants in comparison to previous years. Now, interestingly, at the last polling station, there seem to be some problems. They seem to have very much forgotten about people with special needs. Some woman said to me that she couldn't bring her grandmother to the ballot box because she couldn't climb those stairs. But I think one thing that's very apparent to me is the fact that there is voter fatigue in this country. Many people feel that the traditional players are not able to offer them what they require in the country. And to be able to give you an outlook of how the election went from an international perspective, I'm actually joined right now by Jose Antonio de Gabriel. He's the Deputy Chief Observer of the EU Election Observation Mission here in Lebanon. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Can you tell us, based on your assessment today, how the vote went?
Yeah, well, it was a very well-organized voting. I would mention the fact that representative of candidates, party agents, basically, they had a very strong presence all over the country and across the political spectrum. So there was an instance of pluralism that is very important because they add transparency to the process. We have seen, of course, as everybody has, a number of incidents here and there, basically more in some areas like Saleh or Beirut.
I'm sorry, when you're talking about incidents, are you talking about incidents of voter fraud?
No, incidents of conflict between voters, not between voters, but between party supporters, basically. But what we have observed is that the security forces and the army, they have reacted swiftly to calm down the tensions in general.
Now, I have a question to you regarding Lebanon's regional standing. Of course, this is a country where it's torn between Shia Iran and Sunni Saudi Arabia. Have you seen any examples of outside foreign interference in these elections?
Well, I think that these elections were long awaited by Lebanese people, and our approach and what we have seen is that they were genuinely Lebanese. So there was a real Lebanese demand for these elections to happen after 9 years, after 3 prolongations of the parliament, after a presidential vacancy of 2 years, and obviously the regional conflicts were an element in this long wait for elections. But at the end, the elections have happened, and you see in the voters a genuine commitment to.
I'm going to give you just one example. I want to talk about Bekaa. Of course, that's been a battleground. You have the Iran-backed Shia group Hezbollah, and we had reports that the ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Iran's regional rival, and the ambassador to the United Arab Emirates went to a church there. They actually prayed alongside the candidates that are in opposition to the Hezbollah group. Now, to me, that smells like foreign interference.
Well, we have followed all the allegations, and obviously these issues and others have been discussed. But at the end of the day, what happened is that there are the Lebanese who cast their ballots for Lebanese candidates, and that's what we are observing.
So from the perspective of the European Union, these elections were taking place in such a way that they should have, and there was no interference from the outside, and domestically it ticks all the boxes.
I think that effectively what we have is a Lebanese election is a great moment for the country and a long-awaited moment. So what we would like to highlight is, especially we know that politics doesn't happen in vacuum. They happen in a regional context, of course, and we know that the regional context here is particularly complicated. This is new to nobody, of course, but I would like really to highlight this element of the Lebanese character of this voting.
José Antonio de Gabriel, Deputy Chief Observer of the EU Election Observation Mission. Thank you very much for speaking to us here on France 24. Rochelle, back to you. Of course, we will be bringing you further developments throughout this evening.
Indeed.